Hi, good afternoon. I will get through my announcement, take some questions, and then we will have on the phone our colleague Sergio da Silva, who is the senior person from OCHA, who is on the ground on the island of Dominica, which, as you know, was severely hit by the latest Hurricane Irma. Starting with Bangladesh, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that the number of Rohingya refugees who have fled Myanmar and arrived in Bangladesh in the past month has now reached 436,000. Aid agencies have reached more than 80% of these people with food aid and are scaling up their support. Some 1.5 million liters of water are also being provided daily, and humanitarian partners are also supplying a wide range of supplies, including shelter kits as well as health care. As of this morning, aid agencies have received 43% of the $77 million appealed in the initial response plan. However, the scale of the emergency has surpassed early projections. The response plan is being revised, with funding requirements projecting to rise to $200 million to reach 1.2 million people, including the newly arrived refugees, those who came earlier, as well as host communities in Bangladesh. Humanitarian partners continue to be grateful for this role being played by the people and government of Bangladesh. The government has deployed the army to support aid distribution from the government and private individuals. Nikolai Mladenov, the special coordinator for the Middle East peace process, spoke to the Security Council by video this morning and said that Israel's illegal settlement activities have continued at a high rate, consistent pattern over the course of this year. And his full briefing was made available to you. And as you know, that was part of the requirements of Security Council Resolution 2334. And following an explosive device attack on a convoy on the UN mission in Mali yesterday, our colleagues from the mission tell us that a heavy exchange of fire between UN peacekeepers and unknown assailants followed the explosion. 3 Bangladeshi peacekeepers were killed in the attack. 3 of the wounded peacekeepers are expected to be evacuated from Gao Hospital to Dakar for medical treatment today. And as you will have seen, yesterday we issued a statement in which the Secretary General condemned the attack. He also urged the government and the signatories of armed groups to expedite the implementation of the peace agreement so as to isolate the terrorist groups and other entities bent on undermining the peace and reconciliation process. And turning to Somalia, the Special Representative of the Secretary General, Michael Keating, today welcomed the recent introduction of legislation that would amend the 2016 media law and urged lawmakers to give due consideration to the concerns raised by prominent members of Somalia's news media about existing law and proposed amendments. And the humanitarian coordinator in Libya, Mario da Valle Ribeiro, today condemned the continued fighting in the city of Sabrat that claimed a number of lives, including of civilians. According to information received, 3 civilians were killed and 8 others were injured, including a woman and an 8-year-old child. These figures include a family whose car was hit by rocket while fleeing the conflict. And turning to Syria, our humanitarian colleagues there said they are aware of reports of a school in Syria which was used as a shelter for internally displaced people in Khan al-Sobol in rural Idlib governorate being hit by an airstrike. 4 people were killed and many others injured. Increased violence in south and west rural Aleppo has also been reported as a result of some of the local council areas have reportedly suspended classes. Meanwhile, Saturday, a UN Syrian Arab Red Crescent International Committee for the Red Cross interagency convoy delivered food, health, nutrition, education items, and children's clothing for 25,000 people in the besieged town of East Harasta, Mithrata, Modira, in eastern Ghouta and rural Damascus. The area was last reached by an interagency convoy in June of this year. Bureaucratic delays stalled the movements of the entire convoy, limiting the ability of technical staff to conduct assessment and resulting in the offloading of trucks of humanitarian supplies lasting well into the night. And that's it. I will stop there except to mention that after we're done, Brendan will brief on behalf of the PGA. 6 p.m. today, Tadamichi Yamamoto, the Special Representative of the UN for Afghanistan, will be at the Security Council stakeout. Tomorrow we'll have the President of Guyana, 10 a.m., 2 p.m. The Special Representative for South Sudan will brief you, and that's it, and I will leave the rest to Brendan. Shell.
Thanks, Stéphane. You have probably seen by now the North Korean Foreign Minister spoke to the press before he left New York this morning. He said that Donald Trump's latest tweet was a declaration of war and that Pyongyang wouldn't hesitate to shoot down U.S. bombers even when they're not in North Korean airspace. Does the Secretary General have a reaction to this?
I think, as he said in his General Assembly speech, when you have the rise of tension, the rise of rhetoric, so does the risk of miscalculations. Fiery talk can lead to fatal misunderstandings. We would want to reiterate that the only solution for this is a political solution. And I would also reiterate the Secretary General's call for statesmanship, which he delivered in their General Assembly. Mr. Roth.
I realize it may be difficult to say this even if it happened, but would you be able to tell us in any way, did the North Korean representative ask for the Secretary General when they met Saturday to get more involved in the process?
I will leave you with the readout that we've already issued. Yes, sir.
Stéphane, I have two questions about the referendum in Kurdistan region of Iraq. The first one is, despite the Secretary General's statement and the Security Council, the vote took place today. What's your reaction? And the second one is, the Iraqi Prime Minister ordered deployment of Iraqi troops in the disputed territory that's controlled by the Kurdish Peshmerga. This could lead to a really high tensions or even conflicts.
We would we'll look into those reports. On your first question, unfortunately, I had hoped to have something for you, but I expect it very shortly. Mr. Lee. Sorry.
Some other things, but just two follow-ups. One is on Kurdistan. During the photo op of the Secretary General with the Secretary General of the League of Arab States, he referred this. The Arab League Secretary General referred to a letter he'd written to the Secretary General about Kurdistan. Mm-hmm. What's the content of the letter? Was it distributed? No,
I'm not aware it was distributed. I can check if it was received.
The other one had to do with, you were mentioning, you'll stand behind the readout. So I wanted to ask you about one readout which apparently you didn't stand behind, which was the Organization for Islamic Cooperation. Mm-hmm. The two versions that were put out. I sort of want to understand, because I'm interested in the Cameroon and other readouts, how they're prepared. The first version of the OIC readout said that Somalia was discussed and the plight of the Rohingya. Then a second version was issued, which dropped Somalia in its entirety and switched plight of the Rohingya to the word Myanmar and included Middle East peace process. Was Somalia not included at all?
We had Secretary General had a large number of bilaterals. Sometimes mistakes do happen. The readout's the correct one is always the last one and the corrected version.
So that means that Somalia wasn't discussed with OIC.
Sunrise mailbox of 079.
Okay. What I'm saying is that there's a corrected readout, and that's the readout. Mr. Sato.
So tomorrow is the International Day of Total Abolition of Nuclear Day. Mm-hmm. Do you have any preparation for event, or the SG will make a statement of that?
Yes,
day?
there will be a statement from the SG. Yeah.
Thank you, Stéphane. Two questions. Are you concerned that the Rohingyas in Myanmar could be the victims of human traffickers? And my second question will be on Cyprus. The Secretary General met the leaders of the Turkish and the Greek Cypriot leaders over the weekend. And is the UN is it still in this period of reflection? Do you have any other statement or any other comments?
No,
apart from the readout we had.
On the Cyprus issue, nothing new to announce. Obviously, Secretary General was very interested to meet. To have the meetings he had in New York. As he said in Montana, he remains available when the parties will come to him. So I think we still remain in a period of reflection. Your second question, or your first question, the other question.
The Rohingyas, are you concerned?
Yes, I think any time there is a mass movement of people. We've seen hundreds of thousands of people move. A large number of these people are children. Or women traveling only with their children in a movement of people that is where people are fleeing violence that is not being it's not an organized movement of people. It always creates a heightened risk for trafficking and for abuse of those who are already extremely vulnerable. I do have a statement on the referendum. The Secretary General is concerned about the potentially destabilizing effects of today's referendum in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. The Secretary General respects the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and unity of Iraq, and considers that all outstanding issues between the federal government and the Kurdistan regional government should be resolved through structured dialogue and constructive compromise. The Secretary General expects that the United Nations mandated activities across Iraq, including in the Kurdistan region, will be allowed to continue unhindered. He calls upon the relevant authorities for their continued support. End of statement. Would you let me know when the our guest is on the line? Is he on? Okay, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, now that you've read that out, the organizers of the referendum said that the purpose of the referendum was to document the sentiment of the Kurdish people in contemplation of then having negotiations with the central Iraqi government. They were not looking to use this as a pretext for immediate seceding from Iraq. So if that's the case, why would that be considered destabilizing? You're getting a sentiment of the Kurdish people consistent with the principle of self-determination, which is enshrined in the UN Charter, for the purpose of negotiations.
No one is questioning what is enshrined in the UN Charter, least of all the Secretary General. I think what is
the mouse.
Sergio, are you on?
Yes, I'm on.
Okay,
I can hear you very well.
Give us 2 seconds. No one is questioning what's enshrined in the UN Charter, least of all the Secretary General. What is clear is that we're in a period of heightened tension in the region, and I think the Secretary General has expressed his sentiment fairly clearly in the statement.
The stated purpose of the organizers, was to facilitate negotiations.
I understand.
Prompt secession.
We are not the organizers of this vote. We're expressing our position on it. Matthew, and then we'll go to our guest.
Really fast. In Kenya, the UN staff member on leave, Rosalind Akambe, said she's facing death threats. There's also reports of investigation of her role in the Electoral Commission and the arrest of a member of parliament for allegedly insulting the president, Kenyatta. I'm just wondering, what is the UN? The UN, since it has an office in Nairobi and is seeing these things take place, including the arrest of parliamentarians for verbal insults of the president, does the UN have any response to what's taking place?
I don't have anything on that. You're welcome to check also with the office in Nairobi. Sergio, thank you very much for coming. As I mentioned, we are joined by our colleague Sergio da Silva, who is calling in from Dominica. Sergio, you have the floor. If you can give us a quick wrap-up of the situation on the ground, and then we'll take some questions. Over to you.
Thank you. So we've deployed the UNDAC team in Dominica last Wednesday already, and I've been here since Thursday. We've worked very closely with the CDMA, the Regional Disaster Management Agency, and the local authorities at the governmental level and the National Emergency Operations Center. We're trying to help the local authorities and the CDMA to organize all the international relief assistance coming in country. The UN agencies, the NGOs, different countries have scaled up these last days to bring in food, water, medicines, transportation, because access in the island is a big issue. Many roads are blocked. Many villages are not accessible by road. There is a big urgency to get water and food throughout the country. The whole country has been severely damaged. When you fly over, you see all the trees are down. You don't see any green anymore. Houses are destroyed. There are debris everywhere. People are homeless, and they really seek water and food. So we've been working very closely with the authorities to coordinate all the efforts, trying to address the first urgent needs of the Dominicans, repairing the hospitals as well, trying to restore some water and power in the hospitals so they can also resume their activities and treat the injured, but also the patients who have been hospitalized for more chronic disease. And for the last days, we're seeing an increasing inflow of humanitarian assistance, humanitarian aid workers, assets, search and rescue teams from different locations in the region, but also overseas. And what I can say so far is that we're trying to reach out to as many remote villages as we can, but there's still a lot to do. That's the situation so far. Over to you.
Great. Thank you. We'll take some questions. Matthew?
Matthew Lee, Inner City Press. Thanks a lot. What's the status of travel to and from Dominica? People, obviously the Prime Minister, Mr. Skerritt, came and gave his speech and met with the Secretary General. How is it in terms of getting in and out of the country? And I don't know if you can answer this one, but the U.S. Commonwealth of Puerto Rico has no lights for some time, and I'm just wondering, maybe this is also a political question, if they were to request UN assistance, such as you're providing or preparing to provide in Dominica, could they make that request with or without the U.S. government, or what's your assessment of the damage in Puerto Rico? Thank you.
Over to you, Sergio.
To answer your first, thank you. Answering your first question, the access out of the island and into the island is done mainly of course, by boat and airplane. The seaport in the capital city, Roseau, is functioning. Some commercial ferries have already resumed their travels, their trips to and out of the country 2 days ago. The airports are functional. The Kenfield Airport near Roseau and the larger airport, Melville, in the northeast, they're both operational and planes can take off and land from there. I'm not sure. I don't think commercial flights have resumed yet, but we have military and UN flights coming in and out, also from NGOs, bringing in relief items and evacuating people. The UNHAS, the UN Humanitarian Air Services, have started connections from Antigua to Dominica in the first days of the disaster. It has been key to send relief assistance and humanitarian workers to the island. So the access to and out of the island is getting better and better. When it comes to Puerto Rico, I'm afraid I've been so busy trying to organize things here that I didn't have a chance to look at the bigger picture in the region. But we have an UNDAC team, my team leader based in Barbados at the HQ of the CDMA, who is looking at the regional picture and the regional aspects of the hurricane impact. Over to you.
Thank you. And I would just add, as a matter of principle, the UN stands ready to help following the request of any national government. If you allow me one question, sir, what is the total number of people who've been impacted?
We don't have the exact figures because some areas are still not accessible, but we estimate the total number of affected being around 60 to 65,000 people, which is more than 80% of the total population of the island.
Great. Any questions? Sorry, one second, Miguel, we're just getting a microphone. Sergio. Stand by 1 second.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, the mic is stuck. The number you just mentioned is just for Dominica or for the region of people affected?
For Dominica. I was deployed 2 weeks ago to the response to Hurricane Irma in Barbados, and then I went to Antigua and I was covering the region. But now I'm dedicated to Dominica, and we have other teams covering the rest of the region. So the figures and the updates I'm giving today are for Dominica only. Over to you.
Thank you.
Okay, and what do you say is the most urgent need right now for the people still there?
The most urgent need is really is water, and water. That's really a crucial need. Rivers, the water in the rivers is not consumable. Most of the tanks are broken. The reservoirs or the pumps are not working. The water distribution system is not working either. So we've been focusing a lot on water. Food is also an issue. Shops have not been able to reopen. Food supply is also a big concern, so people need a lot of food. And shelter, roofing of any kind for houses, for hospitals, for clinics, because most of the roofs that were not concrete are gone. So water, food, and roofing, shelter are the most priority needs today.
Thank you. Matthew?
Sure. And this kind of follows up on what was said about national governments. Given that here at the UN, in the fourth committee of decolonization, in fact, I would say the majority of the agenda items are in the Caribbean. Is it really the case? What do you do in cases of territories that are inscribed as needing to have decolonization if the parent or controlling country doesn't make such a request? Is there any provision for the UN to respond to those who actually live in the place, or is it entirely up to the people that are the party being asked to decolonize the area?
I mean, if you don't mind, Sergio, I'll take the question, and that's our main interlocutors for these things are national governments. Sergio, thank you very much for taking the time. We wish you luck. If you need to come back on, let us know any time. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I remain available. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Brendan will brief on behalf of the PGA. Thank you.